One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Be Better podcast. I am your host, Dr. Perkins. Today's episode is called Be Better with Investing. What is Be Better podcasting? Be Better podcasting shares knowledge from fascinating people all the way to pop culture. You are encouraged to glean this content to be better in the world. Okay, let's get to it. We have two fabulous guests today. But before we start, our guest, one of them, the president of one-to-one wealth strategies, has to review something with us so we get it right for our legal departments. Mr. Young, please go.
You got it, Anthony. So this is for our compliance. We have to representatives are registered with and offers only securities and advisory services through Plan Member Securities Corporation, a registered broker-dealer, investment advisor, and member FINRA SIPC. And one-to-one wealth strategies and Plan Member Securities Corporation are independently owned and operated. PSEC is not responsible or liable for any ancillary products or services offered by one-to-one wealth strategies or its representatives. And I think the biggest thing I have to mention, everybody, is we are simply having a discussion today, and we're not making anything, nothing that we're talking about is going to be a recommendation. We won't be talking about any specific investments. We want to stay away from that, but I think we can have a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for reading that out loud so we get it right. Our guests today are Mr. Young. He's the president of One-to-One Wealth Strategies, and his associate advisor, Austin Tech's Sigrist. Hopefully I got that close, or Sigrist. There we go. I think I got it better that time. Thank you both for joining me, fellas. And how are both of you feeling today?
Good.
Thank you.
Good? All right, let's have some fun. The first number $1 million question is always, would you please tell the audience a little bit about yourselves and then transition from there into kind of what your roles are in your business?
Tex, you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. So a little bit about myself. I think the industry is a little difficult for a lot of people to look at and figure out if they actually want to go into it or how to get into it. I became interested in investments and stocks at a very young age. My dad's a CPA, owns his own firm. My mom's actually a CPA as well. So I was always kind of in the industry. And growing up, we had a family member who was actually in a public company. So we went back and I met him, and my dad started just talking to me about it and kind of pushed me and said, hey, why don't we just put a little bit of money in? You can see how it works. You can understand it. And then I figured out that you can make money by really not doing much. And I was about, 8 years old. I was in 5th grade. So I was pretty young. And then kind of just always attracted, looked at some of the bigger companies too, Starbucks. They were at a very little company. And then still wasn't sure where I wanted to go in finance. But once I started talking to my dad and seeing that you could help people too and do finance, so it kind of has the best sides of finance, I guess, both worlds of it, because a lot of finance is back-end office and you're not doing too much FaceTime. Our industry kind of has the front end and the back end, which I thought was really cool. So I basically interned at quite a few companies. And then one day I just had lunch with Robert Young, and essentially from there, it's basically my first job, and I plan on it being my last job. So I've been there for about 4 years now. Took all my licensing exams, started meeting with clients right after college, because I had basically interned and started taking my tests right at the last semester of my senior year. And then from there, it's kind of developed into more recently a new thing, which Robert will probably talk about a bit, but started out by building my own book and building my own business through one-to-one. And then we've just grown so much and expanded that I've now taken on a new role as an associate advisor as well for the partners.
Very good. Robert.
Sure. So I came from, unlike Tex, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got out of school. So I did a lot of different things. I knew I always wanted to own my own business. So I did own a completely unrelated business to this for a number of years. Sold it with the intent to get into this business, and it took a little longer than I anticipated. There was a marriage in between there, which I'm still married to. So not
Good.
same person. Full disclosure.
And I love getting your Christmas cards every Christmas. I appreciate that. I see your wife, your beautiful child, their daughter. So
Yes,
awesome.
yeah. No, thank you. And so I got into it when I was 39 years old. I finally got into the business, believe it or not. And I kind of entered a little, everybody enters it differently. I love the way that Tex came into it because, knowing what I know now, I would have gone back and found somebody who had an established practice and said, hey, let me work as an associate advisor with you and learn the way to do this and eventually take over the practice, whatever it might have been. But it's a great way to learn. I came in with a group of people, didn't get much in the way of training. So took a lot of classes, did a lot of studying, a lot of continuing education to learn a lot of what I did. And one of the things that I got from that as well, I would say, kind of fast forwarding, is now when our advisors come in, they have a tremendous amount of support with the senior advisors that they're working with, which I think is the way it should be implemented in this business going forward. But anyhow, so at 39 years old, entered the business, separated from the people that I went to work with initially. I don't think we had the same ideas in mind. And in '07, separated off on my own, grew the business from there. 2016, I added two partners, which is Adam and Gavin. Adam came over from a big wirehouse. Gavin was with Plan Member Securities, but came in with the thing. Been the best thing we've ever done. It's a little over 5 years. We've grown from what we had then. We've grown by over 400% in the last 5 years, and we plan to keep that growth up. And I would just tell you that it's a great business. Excited to talk about it. We have a lot of great people like Tex and other advisors that we have, older, younger, great team, and we can talk about that part of it as well. That's kind of the summary.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. What is the vision and services of one-to-one wealth strategies?
Sure. So I think the vision of the company itself was, many people get into this business and the allure, because I've heard this story. I've interviewed a lot of advisors that, some we have hired, most we have not. And the idea is I want to get in the business and I want to work with people with millions of dollars. Well, most people with millions of dollars may not want to work with you. It may take a little bit of time. When I got into the business, I don't know that I really thought much differently than that. But when I got into the business, what I started noticing is that there was a lot of people that didn't have $1 million, and there was a whole lot more of them. So there's what we call the mass affluent. Mass affluent, depending on what statistics you look at, are going to have different numbers. But what we focus on is basically clients with somewhere between $50,000 and $700,000 in their accounts. Now, we do have a lot of clients that come to us that are just getting started. So we do have a route for them. But what I loved about it is the fact that we could take somebody that doesn't have any money, is just getting started. A lot of our clients' kids, a lot of our clients themselves, and we can help them. A lot of the larger companies didn't have a route to go. Adam specifically, I'm not going to name companies, but his company, if he didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars, they would take your money. He received no compensation, couldn't really service them. That's not the case here at one-to-one. We want to be able to service everybody. Now, we do have clients with a million plus, 2 million plus, et cetera. We can absolutely help them. But I think what's unique in our practice is our focus has been on helping the people from where they are to grow to that, whatever that number is. And I would also tell you that everybody doesn't need to have millions of dollars to retire comfortably. There's a lot of other factors that are in place. So the vision is to continue to grow that. And I'll tell you, I'm 57 years old. So in 2016, when we created this new partnership, the idea was Gavin's a few years younger than me, and Adam is 33 years old right now. So there's a 24-year age difference between us. And the idea that we're building around is putting a team of great individuals like Tex and others that we have in our firm, and building that next generation already. We wanted to, I see this a lot with other advisors, that they wait until that last 6 months are getting ready to retire, and they scramble to find someone to take over their practice. And it's a really uncomfortable thing to do, and they end up losing a lot of clients because of that. So our thing is to keep this going. We have no desire to sell our practice at all. And the other thing that we have been doing is we spend a lot of time, we are acquiring other firms of advisors that are retiring. We acquired a pretty good sized firm last year, and we're in the middle of doing another one right now.
Very good. Advice for the generations. What would one-to-one wealth strategies say to young people, kind of middle-aged people, and we'll call them seniors? Is there different strategies, or is there some different strategies but some similarities?
Tex, you want to kind of start with that one? I think he's got a
Yeah,
pretty good.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of even on age, it comes more down to when you need to use the money is what I see. We can have a 20-year-old who's looking to buy a house or looking very short term, and they need to have access to their money for one, and it needs to be more conservative. I mean, if it's they're going to spend the money in a year or two, you're probably not going to invest. But if it's still short term, maybe 3, 5 years, I'm going to start a family. I need to have some money, or um, need to buy a house, things like that. So a 20-year-old could be very conservative, and then you could have a 90, 95-year-old who's very aggressive, which is very backwards of what you usually see or read. Usually, the younger you are, the more aggressive, and the older you are, the more conservative. But it all just depends on the money. So that 95-year-old, he might be investing or saving for his 6-month-old grandchild, great grandchild, who has 50, 60 years before they're going to be retiring or need money. Or even somebody that's just retiring, 70 years old, they still have 20, 30 years now to live. So you still need your money to keep pace with inflation and to be able to sustain what if you have medical problems. So there's a lot of factors that come into it. So the age doesn't have as much of a factor when we speak to people, more so when you're going to use the money. So I speak with a lot of the younger people, like the kids of the parents. And what I always stress to them is, yeah, you need to save for retirement. You are going to retire in 30 years, but a lot of those retirement accounts you can't access really for 30 years without taxes and penalties. So you're really not going to touch that. But who knows? Maybe you're going to need to buy a business, put money into it, put a down payment on a car. So there's so many factors that if you were to only have retirement money, it is so expensive to get to that you also want to be able to have some still invested dollars, but that you can access before that.
Okay. So it's situational then, you would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good.
Anthony, I think something that we use, and we use a lot of analogies, and I think it works real well with our clients. In fact, because they tell us that all the time, like, "Wow, that analogy really fits." And I always tell people that think of the investment as a tool for just a moment. And I use the example that you're going to go in your backyard and you have grass, and you just finished mowing your yard, and you go into your garage and you realize you don't have a rake. So you run to Home Depot, and while you're there, the person says, "Hey, by the way, have you seen the sale we're having on shovels?" So you think, "Oh my gosh, 50% off shovels. These are the best shovels on the market." So you come home and you go in your backyard, and your wife looks at you and says, "What are you doing with a shovel?" And said, "Well, they were on sale, so I bought a shovel." And she says, "We need to rake the grass." Well, there's nothing wrong with the shovel. It's the greatest shovel on earth, and you got it on sale, but it's not the right tool for the job. Right? What you just needed was a rake. But if you want to dig a hole, it's probably not the right tool for that. So it's the same thing that Tex was talking about. He did a really good job of putting that in perspective, is that the tool might be short-term for certain people, might be long-term for certain people, but I would tell you most of our clients have both. I was just on the phone with clients of mine that are 66 and 71 years old, and we're talking about money for their 21-year-old grandson that they want to have put away for his retirement that they'll set aside. That'll be very, very aggressive long-term. He's 21. He has 44 years till he's 65. So the way we would invest that, the way we may invest a number of their other assets, is different. And then you have to take into account, not getting too far in the weeds, you have to take into account access. You have to take into account how it's going to be taxed. And we see mistakes like this all the time, where clients either have had an advisor that didn't do a plan for them, or they just did it on their own. And they didn't think about the fact that someday you got to pull that money out. How are you going to pay the taxes on it? How's it going to affect your family? How's it going to affect your estate? How's it going to affect their beneficiaries? These are all questions you need to answer in the front end. So there's a lot of thought that has to be put into that.
What are the fear factors and misconceptions of investing?
Yeah, and I'll touch on one thing on the previous question too. A lot of it comes down to, and we preach all the time, is putting a plan together. A lot of people look at investment and how do you need to invest? What are the best returns? Which is always the second item you need to look at. We need to figure out, and it's just exactly what we were talking about. is what you need your money to do, how you need it to work, and that all takes place in the plan. And the plan tells us how we need to invest. So, like if we take the person who's 20 and they want to buy a house in 3 years, well, the plan is going to walk through, okay, well, we need to access some money in a couple years. That's going to be more short term, but also how are we going to fund our retirement, fund the rest of our life? So that's going to be your long term. But that's all based off the plan that we put in place.
That's right. And I'd say to answer your question on fear factors, and I'm sure Tex can probably add to this as well. I think the most common fear factors, I had an email from a client yesterday. They have, 13, 14 different homes that they own in California, rental homes, and they were starting to liquidate some of these homes. They sold one and then they were getting ready to invest the money, and they emailed me and they said, hey, we're a little concerned about obviously the current world events, what's going on, and so forth. And my standard answer to people is this: if you need the money within the next few months, then current events are going to affect the market. Now, the market's a forward looking indicator, and the market prices things in. They've known about Fed interest rate hikes for months. They've been talking about that. So that's priced into the market. The Ukraine thing, that's priced into the market as well. I know there's some recent volatility, but that's priced into the market. But that's what happens. A lot of people are fear the short term. And what I said to them is, if this money is for the short term, it's best kept in savings. And I know it's not, because we've already had that discussion. I said, but this money, they're both 52. They want to work another 10 years, retire, and then they'll probably access it in 10 to 15 years. I said, but when we look over the long term, you're always going to have a short term event that's affecting the market that scares you. You would basically sit on the sidelines for the rest of your life and never invest. So I said, no, don't worry about the short term. We're focusing on, again, at 52, they could easily be around for 35, 40 years lifespan. That's what we need to focus on. But that's one of the big fear factors. I think I've heard the other fear factor of, I had a friend who had a friend whose uncle's neighbor told him that he lost all his money in the stock market, right? Nobody ever can meet this friend. Nobody ever knows
So
who
I
this
love that
friend
advice.
is.
Go ahead.
Yep. And what I tell them is about the only way to lose all your money would be to maybe put all of your money in one particular individual security. Maybe invested in Kodak 1 year before they went bankrupt, or GM before 2009, that sort of thing. If you're well diversified, you have a good plan in place, it's really hard to lose all your money in the market. But those are common fears that we have to deal with as advisors, and we have to be patient, and we have to take our time with them. So, sometimes I've had clients that took a new client where we met 4 or 5 times, went over a lot of things before they decided to move forward. None of our advisors are commission based. They're all fee based. So we're not getting a big commission check if they invest their money. We want them as clients, obviously. We're compensated. But the most important thing is they'll move forward. They'll move forward when we both think that they're ready to move forward.
I like what you said earlier for the fear factor. There's always going to be a short-term worldwide issue somewhere. And so if you sit on the sideline, you just never get there because you're too scared to invest. So something for our audience to think about. Work with your advisors and I guess get that education and then move forward. But in other words, don't be scared of every little thing. Tex, did you have anything to add before we moved on?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One of them, and I kind of thought of the question a little bit differently, but from what Robert was saying is volatility, the ups and downs, how much it's moving. Everybody thinks of the bad volatility, it going down, like recently. The market's gone down quite a bit since the beginning of the year, but volatility is also good when it's going up. So a lot of people get scared when the markets are moving, but a lot of the times it's opportunity as well. So you can invest through the downs, and it's the biggest sale that nobody wants to be a part of. So there's a lot of opportunity in that, and as well as if you're investing the right way, a lot of your companies or your fund companies will be rebalancing through that, so they're actually buying on the back end as well. And if you're invested in 401ks, or you're making contributions to your IRAs monthly, you're still buying in throughout the ups and the downs of the market. But what I was looking at when I read the fear factor is I just wrote education on my notes. I think a lot of people get scared or nervous of the markets because they don't understand them. I think the more you learn about it, and you're not going to be an expert, and that's why we have a job. People don't wake up and say, "Oh, I'm going to increase my 401k today," or So just it's not so much of being an expert in it, but just understanding how the market works, how it goes up and down. What are some of the factors that come into play, and it isn't as inaccessible as people think. We have people who have $0 in investments. I mean, all the time. I can think of hundreds of clients that we have that started out with $0, and something as simple as $25 per pay period or $50 a month. Maybe that's all you could do at the beginning when you're starting, but it makes a huge difference. So just getting started, it doesn't have to take thousands or 10,000, hundred thousands of dollars to get into the market. You can start at a very low amount, and it does make a big difference too.
And I think, Anthony, I think one other thing that I should mention, and this is kind of fresh in my mind, because Little A just got a call with this client, and another advisor had put them into some products. And, I would say that, we use this analogy a lot. So you probably hear this. And one of those is when you go to a doctor, the doctor, when you walk in, you fill out the little thing, you spend 20 minutes and say, get here 20 minutes early, Robert. So you go there, fill everything out, put all your information in, you hand it to them. Imagine the first time you went to the doctor's office, they don't even know you. You spend 20 minutes filling everything out. And then of course, they're still 20 minutes late to see you. And then you go and you sit down in the room and they just toss the thing aside, don't even look at it and say, you know what, I just got back from a conference and we've got this red medicine. Roll up your sleeve because I'm going to give you a shot. This is great, right? And you're going, wait a minute. I always joke and I say most guys will probably just roll up their sleeves. Women would be like, you're not touching me, right? If you've been married ever, you know what I'm talking about. But anyhow, but my point is they do a diagnosis before they can recommend a treatment. And we always say, if we do an analysis with the client and that analysis looks at everything, what other kinds of income do they have? The client I just got off the phone with, they both have pensions. They both have Social Security. Those are coming in. So the way we would invest their money is going to be different if they have a lot of guaranteed incomes, fixed incomes, versus somebody that might only have Social Security. Maybe they have a business that they're something. So these are all factors that go into this. And when you go to your doctor, how many times have you heard, Anthony, are you allergic to this? What's your heart? So they're looking at everything. Oh, this medicine works great unless if you have or unless you're having any heart issues. And well, then we can't use that one. But what we see happen too often, and this is what just happened in this case that I was just working on, is they immediately said, oh my gosh, the market's volatile. You should buy this product, and sold them 2 products. I spent almost an hour going through exactly how the products work. And when we were done, they said, that isn't at all what we understood. The problem here is you can't fix the problem with products. You have to fix the problem with planning. So if you do a good diagnosis as a doctor, yes, the difference is I come in and I say my knee hurts and you're my doctor, immediately going to say, oh, well, that's a good thing because you know what? I know the best knee replacement surgeon in the state. Well, maybe I just said my knee hurts. I mean, why don't we do it? Why don't we do an MRI? I mean, there's a diagnosis that needs to be done.
Let's start at the smaller level.
Yeah. Hey, we just found out I just need to ice it and stay off of it and maybe do some physical therapy to get it back in place. So that is a big thing I will tell you, is that our industry itself tends to drive fear into people by trying to sell them products that potentially stop them from losing money. But what I showed them in these products also limit the upside opportunity of the market, which when they saw how much they missed out on, they were surprised, to say the least.
And you, without naming a product, what is the definition of a product?
Sure. So there's a lot of different types of products out there, but I think the ones that we typically see, and again, this is the shovel and the rake, right? Is the tool. More often than not, what we see is insurance products that get pitched to people that I can't say that they're inappropriate, but there is a better way to do it. Now, sometimes I know a lot of people will say, well, that person just wanted to make a commission. Well, maybe that's it. What we see a lot of times is that they just don't want to take a little more time. And I was talking to a friend of mine, he's a very well-known cardiologist here in town. And he said to me, Robert, because we've known each other for 11 years now, we're very close friends. And he said, that reminds me of When somebody comes into my office and they say, "Hey, this or that hurts," and I say, "Okay, well, let's go through a full workout," and they just say, "No, no, no, just give me some oxycontins," and he says, "I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to do that." Right? It'll fix the pain for a little while, but you're not really getting to the root of the problem. When we come in, client comes in our office and says, I don't like this market volatility. Well, we can just throw the oxycontins at them, right? We can sell them a product, typically an insurance-based product, that says, oh, it limits your downside, or it limits this, or protects this. But all we're doing is not taking the time, like Tech said. Let's take a little while and say, well, what's this? Let's talk about risk. We have tools that we can use that show them how risk work. Get a feeling of what their understanding of risk is. Get a feeling of how they approach risk, what they would do in certain situations. And what we find is once we've done that, people will say, wow, the biggest risk I have is not putting money away, not saving. It's not really, these fear factors become, they melt away once people understand it. And the last thing I will give you is this. In the 1970s, there was a movie that came out. And oh my gosh, I'm now trying to think. I can't think of her name. It was the one where she was possessed, and they had to bring they had to bring the priest in to try to get it. What do you call it? It's not poltergeist.
Oh, The Exorcist?
The Exorcist. Okay, so I use this all the time. Okay, in The Exorcist, what did the monster or the villain look like? Who knows?
Wasn't it in? Go ahead.
It was inside of her. It was the devil. They never showed the devil, right? Okay, here's the reason. Here's where I'm going. Now, I remember when I was, I think in the 1980s or late 70s, the movie Alien came out, and that thing was frightening, right? I mean, the beginning of the movie, you see that thing, you see the big jaws come out and the saliva, you're like, oh my God, that thing's terrifying, right?
Yeah.
You get a little further into the movie, as human beings, our brains adjust to that fear because we can see it, we can rationalize it, and now we start to get comfortable. I remember later in the movie, I'm like, man, it almost looks like he has braces. Like I'm not even scared. I adjust to it. Oh, that one tooth is a little out of place. I think he probably needs to go to an orthodontist, right? Okay. But what happened is this. What I'm saying is in the poltergeist, or I'm sorry, in the Exorcist. Gosh, I always get the bad word. In The Exorcist, you never saw it. So your imagination, it's one of the scariest movies of all time, but you never saw the monster. The beauty of that is that the director knew our brain can make a scarier monster from our own imagination than any Hollywood production can ever make. And I equate that to this because people create these fears of the market. And once we show it to them, and they're like, oh, at first it's a little scary, but the more they see it, they're like, okay, I know what it is. And then the biggest thing I'd say is just like any relationship, got to set expectations.
Yes. Well, those analogies were perfect. Wow. It's just getting used to and being educated on that fear.
Yes.
So what I preach about fear is you got to face it. You just got to face it.
Yes.
And then you realize, like you said, a little bit into it, it's not that bad. The alien just needs a little braces and they're not scary. So very good. Now we all know how to spend money. What would you say as far as prioritizing money? Would you put investments first, savings second, et cetera, et cetera? How does your list look as far as money?
You want to field that one, Tex?
Yeah, I'll touch on a bit. I think the biggest thing is we usually see that people prioritize enjoyment first and spending outside of like you'll see so many people do enjoyment, vacations, then bills, and you're like, I just don't get it.
Yeah, that's funny.
So I think a lot of it is just you have to take care of the first couple items first. Your bills. I mean, you got to live. You got to have a roof over your head. Debt. Depending on what you have, maybe you don't have debt, but then at least having an emergency fund. So many people we see, and maybe they're just building it up, and it's not their fault, or they just had an emergency that they spent money on, but building it back up to $5,000, $10,000, and a lot of times, I meet with people all the time and like, well, I don't want to have any money in savings because it doesn't make anything. Well, so what? You're going to just put it all on a credit card and then hope you can pay it off? I mean, you have to have some money in savings. Yes, it's not going to be making money, but to access if something were to come up, you need to get 4 new tires on your car, your AC unit goes out. You never know. Or you're playing softball, men's softball, and you break your leg. I mean, it can be anything. And then investments, and then from there, you should be able to go enjoy your money. I have clients or we have clients who go and do all the right things, and they still have the money left over, and we tell them to go enjoy it, or they get a big raise. Take a portion of that, pay off debt, take a portion of that, invest, and then go spend it. We try and make sure that people do spend their money, because that's why you're working, that you need to have some sort of enjoyment from all the hard work and time you're putting into it, and you deserve the reward for what you've been doing.
I think that's well said. We have a society that if you drive down freeways, you see billboards. You do you. It's all about you, and you deserve. And the commercials, everything's focusing on you. You do you. And you're right with, hey, whoa, we got priorities here. We got to pay that mortgage so we can live in that house every month. So, where do you fall into that priority list? And you got to realize, let me find a balance, and I'm not at the top. I have other things first. So, very good advice.
Yeah, I think most people kind of have it backwards. They'll what they do is maybe they pay their bills first, maybe they don't. But a lot of people I see it, they spend their money, then maybe they pay their bills, and then a lot of times you're like, gosh, I don't have even enough left to pay my bills. I don't have anything left to now. I definitely can't save any money, right? But the reality is they have it backwards. The first thing they should be doing is paying their bills. Then you have a certain amount you should be saving, right? How you want to save it, invest it, whatever. There's a mix there. And then what's left over should go to the spending account. And if that's a small amount, well, then you need to look at that. But when you do it the opposite way and you spend, then pay bills, but if you spend before you save, you're going to get yourself into trouble. And the other thing that a lot of people will say is, well, how much should I be saving? Well, I don't know until we put together, we can do an analysis that says, when does retirement a goal, or what are you saving for? And I think, we keep bringing up a lot of retirement here, by the way, but, I always say that the typical 25-year-old that's out there, they're not worried about the next 30 years. They're worried about the next 30 days. So many times when we're focusing with them, with our advisors, my point to our advisors is, look at their short-term needs. Tex hit on that earlier. He was saying, you can't touch your retirement accounts till you're 59 and a half, but we can do other types of accounts that they can be putting away money right now for shorter-term things. But just saving, and I think having some sort of a written budget, expense sheet, whatever you want to call it, just allows them. See, everybody has a budget. They're just not tracking. Most people aren't tracking it. Just like everybody is on a diet. Their diet might be Twinkies and milkshakes, but they're on a diet, okay? But they're probably not tracking what they're putting in their mouth. Well, in this particular case, we just say, look, you don't need to obsess over it. Put together a basic expense sheet. We require that. Every client that comes to us, no matter how much or how little, they've got to do an expense sheet. We have them fill that out. We look at what their expenses are, and we tell them, hey, here's the amount you should be saving to keep your lifestyle up down the road for short-term events, things of that nature.
I ask this question on every podcast because I want my listeners to get many perspectives. Both of you, what would your experienced self say to your younger self if you could go back in time?
Well, considering that Tex is still his younger self,
Yeah.
I would have probably said, be like Tex, because if I would have started saving at his age and done all the things he did at my age, I would be even further ahead. But I tell you, funny thing that we hear, I always say, there's two things I've never heard from a client. One of those is, I shouldn't have saved so much money. And the other one is, I shouldn't have started saving so young. Nobody ever says those two things. So I would tell my younger self, not only save that money, invest it, don't touch it for a long time, and don't worry about it when the markets go up and down. Because if you look at it, obviously markets go up more than they go down. Just leave it alone, let it keep growing, start early, and just being consistent.
I think a lot of it comes from your parents, and I was very lucky in that sense. And I started out when I was, like I said, it was my uncle's company. So it was individual stocks. Now I've learned more, and it's more big institutions. You have, people are watching it all day, every day, and they're managing the money. But I think either way is when you are younger, to be able to actually go in and look at it. I used E-Trade, but you can use anything. You can log in and see how it works, but that gives you an understanding. Like, you log in one day and you're down 10%, whatever it is. You're like, oh, that sucks. Now, I was young, so I wasn't like I was going to go use the money. Like, I didn't have any use for it. So for me, it was more education. I got to actually understand, wow, if I don't do anything or if I put more money in, like you look back in a year, whatever it is, or next week, well, it's changed quite a bit. And knock on wood, and if you're buying individual stocks, it's going up. But in most cases, the market goes up 74, 75% of the time. So 3 out of every 4 years, it's positive. So I think a lot of it, as when you're younger, is just understanding how the markets move made a big difference for me, and made me more interested in it, because I was like, I could understand the longer you invest, the more you put away. When it does go down, it sucks. It does, but it's not a time to panic, because if you have a time horizon and you're investing the right way, it'll come back. Now, if it went down and I knew I needed to, spend some money for college, or I'm going to buy a house in a couple years, well, I'm probably using my money the wrong way. But it just all comes back to getting education, understanding it a little bit, then utilize somebody who's in the profession. They understand what to do, but at least it's almost like a different language. If you go up to, somebody, my girlfriend, somebody like that, the understanding of it, it's almost like a different language to them. So just having a little bit of understanding, from there, you can speak to Robert or I or advisors and understand what they're saying when you're going through your plan.
Very good. Last couple of questions. How do you balance your busy careers with your family life?
Well, I would say it is. It's not easy. Texas, fortunately, he's a young single guy, just got out of college 4 years. Well, he was in college. It was his senior year at WP Carey over at business school at ASU when he started with us. So obviously, that makes things easier. Myself, I had been married for a while before I got into the business, and then a few short years later, we had our daughter. You're balancing a lot of things. I think the key to it is in the very beginning when advisors join our firm, and Tex knows this, is you have to put family first. I got an example. We have a very important meeting that we were supposed to go out to later this month. It's the week of like the 21st. And my partners and I needed to fly out of state for this meeting. And I realized right after that is my daughter's spring break. And I have a 12-year-old daughter, and it was her spring break time. And I told my wife, well, my wife's the one that brought it. She's like, oh, that's autumn spring break. And I said, oh gosh. And she said, well, you're not going to go on the thing, are you? And I said, no, I'll take care of it. So I reached out to both of my partners right away. And I said, hey, I did not realize that happens to be the week of spring break. They also have young kids, and their spring breaks were the week prior. So we assume they're all the same week. But the point is, we're not going to be able to go to that meeting for another month after that in April and go out. My partners immediately said, not a worry, we'll just reschedule it for April. And I thought that was really neat, because what it said to me is, we've set a culture where it's important to take care of family. It's important to do things that you need to do for yourself. So, a few things that we do for ourselves, we make sure that our employees do the same thing. I know Tex, when he first started, I told him there's no working on weekends. I've had advisors call me and say, hey, I've got a meeting with this client on Saturday. And I said, well, you need to reschedule it. And like, well, why do I need to reschedule it? I said, because we're closed on Saturdays. And he said to me, well, no, I can just do it myself. I said, I don't think you understand. We're closed on Saturdays. It took him a moment.
Nice.
And I said, call the client back and say, you know what? Weekends are time that I spend with family. And so, as I'm sure you probably want to do the same thing. However, I do have next Tuesday after 5 if you want to do an evening appointment. You know what the client said immediately? I completely understand. I'm glad you're making that a priority. They became a client. So you have to spend that time. You have to do that. And let me tell you, as a business owner, because not only do I have my own book of business to take care of, but I have a whole team, advisors, partners, a lot of other decisions to make. So, you're wearing a lot of hats as a small business owner. I find it that you just have to block it out. I know Tex knows, but if you look at my calendar, I block things out well in advance. There are events that I need to do. There have been a few things I've missed. Once in a while, there's something that I miss. Major events, not a chance. My clients always understand. And I think if you're just straightforward with them, they're fine with it. So it's not an easy thing. It takes effort, and it takes a little bit of organization and discipline. But if you can do those things, anybody that gives the excuse that they can't balance their life and their work life and their home life, I think it's because they're not willing to take the time to make that happen.
Very good. Tex, on the other hand, on the younger side, how do you balance things?
Yeah, it's not easy, but it is also easier because I don't have a wife or a kid. I have a dog, but it's a little different still. But I think our business is kind of difficult, and I'm sure there's other businesses with it because we're never done. So there's never like you take on a client and you spend an hour with them and then you're done. There's always something else, whether it's clients or working to prepare for next meetings or so it's you could work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day if you really wanted to. So just like Robert said, I don't take meetings on weekends. I try not to work on weekends. I don't really. So I think it's just prioritizing. I mean, me being young, just starting in the business, I've focused more on the business side of things than I still have a lot of friends who go out all the time. Thursday nights, they're going out to the bars, things like that. So I prioritize the business more than a lot of that activities. But it's definitely not easy. I mean, if you wanted to, you could work weekends, nights as much as you want. So I think it's exactly what Robert said. It's just making sure you close the computer and go actually do things, go outside, go on a hike, enjoy yourself. So,
I
but
appreciate
yeah,
both your
it's not
words
easy.
because it's all about taking care of your mind, body, and soul. So I love hearing what you're saying. Take time for your family. Enjoy the moments. Very good. Final question. You have any final advice, final thoughts for the audience?
Go ahead, Tex.
I don't know if I do. I think a lot of it with investing is just getting started. That's the biggest thing. Whether it's in emergency fund and putting in a savings account or putting $50 away a month. I mean, it all makes a difference. Um, One of the big things, and we've kind of touched on it, the younger you are, you're not thinking 30 years in the future. I mean, you're thinking maybe I need to get a new job. Maybe I'm getting married in 2 years. So there's so many other factors that retirement's really tough. And that's why, like, a lot of times I'll just show somebody, if you're doing $50 a month, here's the number. I mean, you can pretty much do it. And it's just showing them, like, $50 a month, that's one dinner. I mean, now it's half a dinner, but
Oh,
it makes a
he's
big
fine
difference.
dining, huh? Okay.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. So just getting started, putting a small amount away, setting and forgetting something like within your 401k, doing the automatic increases every year. It makes such a big difference. And then I would say speaking to somebody that actually understands it, getting a plan put in place. It the younger you do it, the bigger difference it's going to change. My dad always says, a 1% difference isn't much, but if you do 1%, every week, every day, 30 years, I mean, it's huge. You know?
Yeah, I would say probably just to kind of keep it short and sweet is I would tell people that right now, let's say whatever your age is, it doesn't matter. I have people come to me in their 50s and saying, you know what, I really haven't saved a dime and what do I need to do? Well, maybe that person isn't going to retire at 60, but maybe they don't want to. I do have people that come to me and they don't want to retire. But they would like to be able to back down a little bit. So what we think about in investing is that you're taking a little bit of money right now. You're going to work doing whatever you do every day, and you're working to earn money, right? Most people, if they didn't have to work to earn money and they just got free money, they wouldn't work. And that's evident by the number of people that aren't working that we're getting government handouts, right? But we go to work to earn money. So you're having to do something and then you are paid for doing that. So you're working. If you take a little bit of that, I tell people, a little bit at a time and you invest it. If it's invested correctly, it continues to grow. And then one day, maybe you're 50 or 60 or 65, whatever the number is, you don't have to go to work anymore because your money has now grown to the size where it goes to work for you every day and it provides an income for you. But that doesn't happen by you doing nothing for 30 or 40 years. By doing a little tiny bit, like Tex said, and then one day you have a pile of money, and so you get up in the morning and you make your coffee and go sit out and watch the sunrise, and your money goes to work for you, and you don't have to go to work. It's going to work, and it's paying your bills, and it's paying for everything that you want to do, hobbies, travel, whatever it might be, because of what you've done over those decades.
How can the audience contact you guys?
Well, I think they could reach out. I'll give Tex. You want to give out your email if they want to reach out and email, and then also the office number as well?
Yeah. So my email is tex@one-to-one-ws.com. So it's TEX at the number one, the number two, the number one, WS.com. And then our office number is 623-850-0016.
Okay. Anything to add? I heard you,
No, I was going to
Robert,
say
you had
they can
anything to
also
add?
go to our website, which is One-to-One Wealth Strategies, and that's spelled out ONE, the number two, ONE, Wealth Strategies, and go on our site. There's some information on there for you. We do have some good videos. Something that I might also recommend people do on the site is, and I'm going to do more of these. I've actually done a couple podcasts as well. I interviewed a young teacher I have. She's 37, 38 years old. She started working with me when she was 22, fresh out of college. It's a phenomenal story because people are like, well, you have to make a lot of money to have money. She's just great proof. She's single. She didn't make a ton of money. She didn't win the lottery. At 37, 38 years old, she's paid off her house. She has no debt, never had any other debt. She's saving money, and she's still teaching. She's not a principal. She's not a superintendent making that kind of money as a teacher. And it's just a great story. We also have another one. It's Larry, who's now our director of operations. He's a former administrator for many years. And we just talk about how he got started. And we're going to be interviewing some people in different walks of life. But go to the website. There's some really cool stuff to see on there because I just want people to see, Anthony, that they don't need to be the Kardashians. They don't need to have a rich uncle to be able to have a great life. And it's all relative to what you're spending, what your needs are, and what you're comfortable with and enjoying your life. It's a cool thing.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. One-to-One Wealth Strategies, Robert Young, President, and Austin Tech Sigrist, Associate Advisor. Please contact them to get things started. Thank you, gentlemen. I would love for you to hold, and I will talk to you offline, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.